nation's High Commissioner for Human Rights. And we have with us this morning a distinguished panel of speakers from the Philippines and Kenya, um, uh, some connecting online remotely, and others present in the room with us. We're also joined by the Chief Statistician of OHCHR from Geneva. I'd just like to ask for indulgence for 1 minute while we're trying to resolve a technical issue in terms of connection of one of our panelists. So thanks for bearing with us. We'll be starting in a minute. Thank you. So, sorry. So once again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this discussion on new human rights data partnerships. My name is Mark Titus Ibreros. I'm a human rights officer and an indicators and data specialist working with the indicators and data unit of the UN Human Rights Office. So we're based in Geneva, and in relation to the SDGs, we are um, supporting the role of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights as custodian of 4 SDG indicators. And in the past several years, we've also been working significantly with statistical offices across the world and bringing them into a closer partnership with national human rights institutions. This session focuses on how new data partnerships can help expand the traditional boundaries of national statistical systems and thereby help strengthen public trust in official data. Since the launch of the United Nations guidance note on human rights-based approach to data in 2017, our office, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, has nurtured these innovative collaborative platforms between human rights institutions and statistical offices at the country level. And this session will feature 2 voices coming from Kenya and the Philippines that have pioneered this kind of partnership. So before we begin, I'd like to introduce our speakers. First, we have Mr. Nicolas Facel, who's connecting online from Geneva. He is the Chief Statistician of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. He coordinates the Human Rights Indicators and Data Unit and previously worked with the Swiss Federal Statistics Office. So Nicola, welcome to the panel. We also have the Director General of the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Mr. George McDonald George Obudo, who has recently been appointed to his role after a long and distinguished career with KNBS. So welcome, George, to this panel, and thanks for accepting our invitation.
Thank you.
George is also joined by his colleague, Ms. Renis Akinye Bunde, who's an expert in peace governance and human rights statistics with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. She's connecting remotely, and hopefully in a minute she'll be online. And we also have Mr. Raymond Rosuelo, who's the chief of the Knowledge and Research Division of the Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines, the National Human Rights Institution of the Philippines, and he'll be sharing also the Philippine experience. So welcome to our panelists. And I would like to invite you, our dear colleagues, to help enrich this discussion with your feedback, your comments and questions. You can post them here in person by raising your hand. Those who are connected online may post them through the chat, both in Huva and in the meeting platform. And we'll try to allocate more or less half an hour for our panelists to share their experiences and insights. And then we'll try to have enough time for an interaction with the participants. So without further ado, I'd like to begin this session by asking Nicola to share a few thoughts and introductory remarks on the rationale and scope concept as well of partnerships between NHRIs and statistics offices. So Nicola, uh, how can the collection and use of data and statistics help improve the lives of rights holders, especially those who are most at risk of being left behind?
Thank you very much, Mark, and I hope you can hear me well.
Yes,
Let
Nicola.
me first express my thanks for this opportunity and the privilege to participate in this session, which such a distinguished panelist. And thank you for this opening an important question. I think it is essential that any data collection and dissemination contributes to indeed improving people's life, especially those left behind. I believe that for most statisticians or data specialists, um, they, they, there's hope, and they hope that their work impact positively on people's lives and human rights. And for this to happen, data work needs to be guided by human rights considerations and needs to be in line with universally agreed human rights norms and principles. It means respecting data confidentiality and people's rights to privacy, something well recognized and in the internationally agreed fundamental principle of official statistics and enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was adopted by member states, the UN member states in 1948, and whose 75th anniversary is celebrated this year. Yet, and despite how challenging it can be today to protect this right, several other human rights need to be upheld in data work if we want to improve people's lives at the end of the day with our work on data. And I would encourage all data stakeholders, all participants to the World Data Forum to have a look at the publication on the human rights-based approach to data published by the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. I will put it in the chat in a couple of minutes. This document is available in all UN official languages. But in short, having an approach to data consistent with human rights implies upholding six overarching principles of participation, self identification, data disaggregation, privacy, as well as transparency and accountability. I won't go into the details of those principles. They are outlined in the publication, in the guidance note on a human rights based approach to data. But the participation, just as an illustration, relates to the fact that if we collect data, if we want to disaggregate data for on specific groups, we need to involve those groups in the process, also in the definition, in the collections of the data and in the dissemination, and that they can take place through various means and using different tools. The principle of accountability relates to the accountability to the quality of the data, but also to the effective use of the data to improve the situation on people's lives. So I think those human rights principles, um, whether you are a data producer or data users or data subject, are extremely important. So respecting, protecting, and promoting this principle will help produce and use data and statistics, enhancing people's lives, in particular those that may be typically left behind by traditional data collection and dissemination approach. So maybe I'll stop here for the first questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola, for that overview. As a follow-up question, how can we operationalize the human rights-based approach to data principles in national statistical systems, particularly in terms of official data?
Thank you. Integrating and operationalizing human rights into national statistical systems, which involve, of course, official statistical institutions as well as other organizations, calls for new practices and new partnerships. The OHCHR's work on implementing the human rights based approach to data has opened up new spaces of engagement, dialogue, and collaboration between stakeholders in national statistical systems, and especially between national human rights institutions and national statistical offices. Both institutions share the common goal of disseminating information to improve people's lives, and both institutions are data and evidence angry. So respecting the mandates of both types of institution, the objective here is not to transform human rights experts into statisticians or statisticians into human rights experts, but to strengthen the collaboration to better inform and assess the impact of public policies in a manner consistent with human rights. OHCHR has supported the signing of today 12 memorandum of understanding as a tool to foster collaboration between national human rights institutions and national statistical offices. These MOU were signed in Kenya and in the Philippines, uh, which are well represented today in this panel. I also look forward to hearing from them. But they were also signed in Mongolia, Moldova, Kosovo, Albania, Uganda, Liberia, Mexico, Jordan, Ghana, and the occupied Palestinian territory. These MOUs have spurred concrete, practical initiatives to generate disaggregated data for human rights analysis and support national efforts to leave no one behind as part of the SDGs implementation. People who were invisible in the official statistics have become visible and participated in data collection upholding their human rights and dignity. This concerns, for instance, persons with disabilities, refugees, stateless populations, indigenous peoples, and intersex people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. And before we move to our next panelist, and sorry to put you a bit on the spot here, but so Nicola here was responsible basically for the very first such MOU, which was established in Kenya over 6 years ago. So Nicola, if you don't mind, could you share the story of how that particular mission to Kenya was organized, who were in the initial discussions, who were around the table, and what was really the idea for such a partnership in Kenya? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Indeed, yeah, I had the privilege to be in Kenya, in the first country where such a dialogue was and collaboration was established. It was we brought together through the presence of the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Kenya. We brought together staff from the National Statistical Office and from the Human Rights institution together, and initiated a dialogue between the colleagues of the respective institutions. So I think it was a very interesting discussions, and I remember colleagues from the two institutions telling at the end of the workshop that the impressions and the initial thought when they went to this workshop. So we could hear quite candid uh, um, points made by the colleagues, by statisticians, as well as the human rights advocates or experts um, on the on the part of the human rights of the statisticians. Maybe start with the statistician. They were saying that they thought that it was impossible to work with the human rights experts or colleagues, that those colleagues were good at shouting, at criticizing, but not necessarily able to engage in a thorough discussions on data and indicators in a constructive manner. And they realized through this dialogue, this collaboration, the workshop, that it was absolutely possible, that there were colleagues and they could work together. And on the side of the human rights colleagues and institutions, their the initial impression that was that the statistics, the official statistics produced by the statisticians, were actually not relevant, not useful for their work, for the promotion and assessments of the human rights situation. And through again, this dialogue that was initiated in the country, they realized that that was not the case, and how important data were for human rights, whether data was available for certain groups or was not available. So it really initiated a great collaboration, and which was on the definition of the identification of the needs in terms of statistics, but also in the actual data collection. And I think we will hear more from our colleagues in Kenya. But in the context of the census, there's been really a collaboration on the actual data collections, bringing together representative on groups that when before not visible in statistics in the actual data collection. So it improved the trust, it improved the quality of the data, and responded to the call for different population groups to become visible in the statistics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola, for reminding us of the importance of dialogue and breaking down silos, as well as, let's say, intellectual and professional boundaries. And to hear more about the Kenyan experience, I'm turning now to the Director General of the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Mr. George MacDonald Bundu. So, George, from a statistician's perspective, what has been the value added of human rights in your work in the statistics in Kenya?
Thank you so much for the question. The work that we are doing with the institutions on human rights has really benefited us, and especially now after signing the MOU that Nicholas talked about, we have had a number of things to do together, because you see, from our side, we are dealing with statistics, but we are really not experts in human rights issues. And so the two bodies have come together to work as a team. So after the MOU, the first thing that we did was to have a training that would bring us together so that we share from the perspective of statistics, what do we expect? And from the side of human rights issues, what is expected of us? And so by coming together, we were able to develop a consensus on how to work as a team. And this has this has gone very well with the two groups, because the data that we are now producing is actually based on very good following the principles of conducting statistics and producing very high quality data, which of course is benefiting all of us. We are able to get the water, the Human Rights Commissions would want to use, and we are able to get what, as a Bureau of Statistics, we are also able to report. And in the process, surveys have been conducted, and we still have in Kenya, we have stateless population. We have a group that is called the Galjil. We have a group that is called Shona. We have a group that is called Pemba. There are a number of them, like the Makonde, the Nubian, but Nubian and Makonde were already been given citizenship. So at the point that we are dealing with these MOUs, we had the Pemba, the Shona, and the Galjil being still stateless. Now, we managed to conduct surveys on the two groups, that is the Pemba and the Shona. And actually, since then, the Pemba has been given citizenship in Kenya, after establishing their numbers and the issues that are surrounding the lifestyle that they were leading as stateless persons. So it has actually been very, very beneficial. And that includes even coming up with the indicators that are able to be reported for the SDGs. For example, the indicator number 16.10.1, which looks into the element of those who have been killed, kidnapped, enforced disappearance, and the like. So we are able to report on that, just courtesy of what we have done as a team. And we are also members of the expert group on refugees, IDPs, and stateless statistics, which is also adding value to the whole process of what we are doing.
Thank you very much, George, for that overview. Could you share a bit more about the efforts of your bureau in terms of making visible those groups that you mentioned were previously invisible? So those ethnicities, stateless population groups that back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, were made more visible through the census, as well as the intersex population of Kenya.
Thank you for the question. Now, what has happened so far? I think we have made quite some progress along that line, and specifically, if I'm to touch on the last census which we did in 2019, there was a very heated debate, particularly when we were approached to include stateless persons. I can tell you, I'm one of the fellows who was very resistant at the beginning. I was very resistant, but it was out of the fact that I had not understood what the intersex persons are all about. But when we were subjected to some scenarios of actually now seeing those who are stateless being on a round table together, and now starting to really process what their situation is all about, if that is the condition, uh, I got very quickly to say that let us include this group. But I was very, very adamant at the beginning. But thank God that we had a roundtable discussion, and it became now possible for me to understand where we are coming from. Because if you have never imagined what an intersex person is, you can imagine that you have both organs, and you are in a situation where you are to mingle with men or you are to mingle with female, it becomes very difficult. And this is a biological condition that is changing over a period of time. And so for that reason, at the census time, we included intersex as a third sex. And of course, beyond that, we also tried to provide for, we normally take care of ethnicity, and we would list all the ethnic groups in Kenya, which we did. And so even those that have been feeling marginalized, we were able to provide for codes for them. And there were quite a number of such. We got a lot of memoranda from different groups requesting for inclusion. And then even for the IDPs, wherever they are, because they are not living in their normal stations, when we came to the question of reasons as to why one migrated, we were able now to capture the IDPs. We were also able to capture the refugees. And for the refugees, they are not just living in the camps. We have two large camps in Kenya, the Dadaab and Kakuma. And we have also noted that there are quite a number of them who are living elsewhere in towns. And, so we tried to get this population to come out. So then we had also taken care of the migrants, though this one was, we had a separate questionnaire, a small one, which was making a follow-up of those who had migrated from those households. Who are they, and are they remitting anything back home and the like. So we were able to capture that. Out of that process, we also managed to have questions on persons with disability, and for the first time we included the albinos. So albinism was captured in the questionnaire, and then we also had the outdoor sleepers. So all that was able to give us quite a lot of information, which resulted into getting a monograph, analytical report that is on the persons with the disabilities. Currently, we are working on the one for albinism. We hope to have that one also ready to be released. So in the process, we were able to capture quite a lot of information for these groups that are kind of forgotten or marginalized.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, George. So if I understood correctly from our technical focal points, Renis is able to connect now. So Renis, welcome, and thanks for joining us. So Renis is a colleague of George at the KNBS. And if you don't mind, Renis, I know it's very early back in Nairobi, but could you share with with the audience your experience in terms of working with the Kenya National Human Rights Commission on the various initiatives that George mentioned, including, for example, the implementation of SDG Indicator 16.10.1, and more recently, the development of demographic questions that would help operationalize Leave No One Behind in household surveys in Kenya.
Thank you, Mark. I hope I'm audible. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, now when it comes to our experience with the Human Rights Commission, as my Director General has indicated, we've been working hand in hand and the collaboration has been good. And out of the collaboration, we are working on how to improve our SDG goals. I don't know whether I'm audible. I'm hearing some noise.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Oh, thank you very much. And one of them, as mentioned before, is SDG 16.10.1, where we realized that the Commission can be the custodian of that SDG indicator, where they collect information from various stakeholders, both state and non-state actors, and then they report back to us. This is important because they all know human rights activists, and they know how to reach out to them. And as my director has indicated, we have taken them through what it takes to accept statistics as official, so they know how to ensure that the data they collect is of quality. when it comes to the standard module, it is a work in progress, and we are trying to ensure that whenever we have household-based surveys, then we can have a standard module that can include the groups that have been left behind. So the Commission has equally been of importance when it comes to this, because first they link us with OHCHR, who are now like supporting us, and even other UN agencies. And they are also experts when it comes to some of the questions that can be included. So that's why we've been working with them, and we'll still work. We are almost renewing our MOU. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renis. And please stay online because I'm sure our audience will have more questions for you and George. So at this point, let me now turn to the voice of NHRIs. From my home country, for disclosure, previously worked with their institution, with the National Human Rights Commission of the Philippines. And Raymond here has been leading the operationalization of this partnership between their commission and the Philippine Statistics Authority. So Raymond, my first question is, if you could recall the time before the partnership with the Statistics Authority was formalized and compare that to the present situation where now you have an MOU with them. What has changed? What has improved? And what have been the benefits for human rights work as a result of that partnership?
Okay, thank you for that question, Mark. Um, the status of the SDG indicators for 16.10.1 as well as 16.1.2 in the country prior to our agreement with the PSA was considered as a tier 3 indicator, meaning there.
Excuse me, Raymond, maybe can you explain to them what 16.1.2
Yes,
indicator
the
is?
16.10.1 is an indicator for the killings of human rights defenders and journalists and trade unionists, verified killings, and while 16.1.2 is conflict-related deaths. These particular indicators were not, well, it was given of less priority, if that is a safe thing to say, in the sense that there was no established methodology as well as of course, there was no regular data collection that was happening. But with the forging of the agreement between the PSA and the uh, Commission on Human Rights of the Philippines, we're now able to initiate that process of elevating these two indicators to a much higher tier of classification. We've just recently presented to an interagency body the proposed methodology for this for 16.1.2, and we're in the process also of preparing for the presentation for the methodology for 16.10.1, which is a requirement for an official endorsement to be given by the Philippine Statistics Authority Board. It's a that will be necessary for it to be integrated into the Philippine statistics system.
And what type of data does your institution bring into the table? So normally, statistics agencies work on household surveys, censuses, and administrative data. But in terms of the role of NHRIs as data collectors and as data sources, um, uh, in relation to the two indicators you mentioned, can you share with us what type of data you
Okay.
contribute?
For 16.10.1, or the verified killings of human rights defenders and trade unionists as well as media personnel, our institution has 16 regional offices with investigators all over the country doing investigative work with that does the data collection for these types of cases. So there's a system in place to gather the data that can be passed on to a national statistics authority so that that can be officially integrated into the Philippine statistical system. The same process is also um, available for the other indicator, 16.1.2. We have also forged agreements with the Armed Forces of the Philippines for cases of involving violations of international humanitarian law. So they're transferring to us possible cases of conflict-related deaths, which are being vetted and investigated by our lawyers and investigators in the office.
Wonderful. And also, recently, there's been a positive development in your role within the statistical system of the Philippines. Could you share with us how your NHRI has become, let's say, mainstreamed in the
Yes.
official statistics of the country?
Well, last year we had the opportunity to be made part of an interagency body. It's called the Interagency Committee on Peace, Justice, Statistics. It is the body that recommends to the PSA what type of statistics will be adopted into the national statistical system. So normally an NHRI is only given an observer status, but we have been made a formal member since last year, starting in July of 2022. And this year, we've been recently elected as co-chair of that body. So we are now in the process of guiding the agenda for this particular indicator, and we have been welcomed essentially by our by other government institutions to present possible inclusions into the statistical system.
Great. So now that you're not only users, but also in a way you're setting the standards for official statistics on peace and justice. My final question is, how is this role of the NHRI, how is it useful for also integrating data from civil society? Because as you know, NHRIs work a lot with civil society organizations. How can you help bring civil society data and citizen-generated data into official
Um,
statistics?
it's an official policy of the National Human Rights Institution of the Philippines, the CHR, to engage with civil society organizations. We've been the recipient of support from international partners so that we can effectively engage with civil society organizations. So we have put in a system wherein possible information can be brought to the CHR and properly vetted so that there's no double counting of cases, and so that it effectively also widens the reach of the agency. Given that at present, as I mentioned earlier, that we have 16 regions, but since the country is quite big, it requires presence in thousands of local government units, and these civil society organizations can serve as force multipliers for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raymond, George, Nicola, and Renis. So that closes the interventions from our panelists. So the floor is now open for questions, comments, feedback, suggestions from the audience. So just feel free to raise your hand and present your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will break the ice of the questions and comments. This was a fantastic panel. It is so commendable, the work that the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has been leading in fostering these partnerships between national human rights institutions and national statistical offices. And this is even more timely now in this forum where we are seeing a major opening from the statistical community to work with other sources of data and to also recognize the role of other institutions, other partners that are allied to national statistical offices and can also support their efforts in the midst of scarce resources that exist right now in the data universe that is necessary for adequately measuring the situation of people and how to, as Nicholas put very well, how to make data used for enhancing and improving the life quality of the people. And so I just, I'm just wanted to congratulate the efforts in both countries for making use of a national human rights institution as such ally, and for also trying to, diversify into the different roles that those institutions can play, both in supporting as the example that we heard in Kenya, improving the service and the data collection by the institution themselves, but also in filling that role of gathering data or enabling, in a way, more use of the data that is produced by civil society organizations to be brought into the official systems as well. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Any responses from the panelists?
Yeah, we are of course very we're happy to hear the positive impact that this initiative has gone, and it will inspire us to continue with improving our services in the near future.
Yeah, I think one big achievement that we have made, and especially with the cases of the intersex persons, is that a bill has been drafted, which will be tabled in Parliament, and so this group could have an act very soon, which will really protect them and open ways for the kind of services that they really need. So it is a milestone that we have made. And of course, Kenya must be among the very few countries that have isolated, have come out very clearly to have the intersex persons numbers known. Thank you.
Yeah, and not just nationally, no, even at the county level, the data is also proving very useful.
Yeah, we were able to establish the numbers nationally, and we reported them up to the county level. That is the next level after the national. We could not go much below because, again, there's the element of the confidentiality of information. If you go much lower, then you are now exposing them. Yeah, being that there were not very many. In fact, we counted, we established a number of 1,524. Yeah, so countrywide. So but the good thing is the kind of interventions that are now being put in place for this group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Nicola, Renis, any reactions, comments? Okay.
Yeah, maybe just to add, the partnership has assisted us to know that we really need to go beyond our statistical knowledge in order to understand the groups that we serve. Yeah, that's what I can add.
Yes. And I also would like to acknowledge the important role of the Danish Institute of Human Rights. They are one of those NHRIs that are leading within the global network of NHRIs in terms of, let's say, spreading the good news about the role of NHRIs in national data ecosystems. So they've also been supporting the Kenya and Philippine NHRIs, as well as a few other NHRIs in terms of operationalizing SDG indicator 16.10.1, so and other SDG indicators. So thanks very much, Sayonara and other colleagues at the HR for that. Other interventions, comments, questions? Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for the fascinating discussion. Hi, all the panels, and also Nicholas and Renis from online. So I'm Catherine from UNOHCHR, the UN Secretariat based in New York headquarters. And thank you for introducing the SDG indicator 16.10.1, which is super helpful and insightful to be included in the data reporting and analysis process. Just curious about like the following actions taken to provide the human rights defenders or the media people, or the governments or OHCHR responsible for that? If you can elaborate a bit on that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think maybe Raymond, you can respond first in terms of the vision for collecting this data in the Philippines, and how will then you share it with OHCHR as the custodian of this indicator?
Well, the first stage, of course, is for us to gather the information at the national level so that it can inform the work of the commission. We, of course, have promotion and protection functions within the commission. And then, of course, we'll submit that to the National Statistics Office for proper integration into the national statistical system, and then they are required, of course, to submit it to the custodian agency. We this right now there's an ongoing congressional debate in the country about the passage of a human rights defenders bill, and this information is very critical, given that there is a strong opposition sometimes from the security sector regarding who should be considered as human rights defenders. So we see this as an important tool, no, to inform the public about what the importance of this particular indicator, and how they should how it should impact public policy in the Philippines. So and along with, of course, the contributions of the Danish Institute of Human Rights, who help us as well with the development of an online tool. We look at these two complementary um, um, mechanisms as something that will help educate our policymakers in the process.
And Renis, from the Kenyan side, what has been the steps taken since the launch of the national data collection mechanism for this indicator?
Yeah, as a country, we brought all the stakeholders together, or the activists together, both from state and non-state actors, and we agreed on some of the key terms, and we worked on strategies that can ensure that we have no duplication. And we agreed that the Human Rights Commission will be the custodian. Then they'll be sending to the statistical office, because we are the custodian of the national SDG framework, but they can as well report direct to OHCHR. So to us, the fact that we brought them together is a milestone. So we hope that with time we'll have the various activists reporting to the Human Rights Commission. Yes.
Thank you.
And of course, on top of what Renis has talked about, as the custodian of official statistics, we are also reporting the same to our line ministry, the State Department for Economic Planning, which then would submit all the SDG indicators that we are reporting. So we are adding to the, we are growing our list of the SDG indicators that we are reporting. So we are we are on course in trying to reach the 232 indicators. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's an important point, George, because SG16 indicators are one of those who are in a way left behind in the entire indicators framework. And through this partnership, we basically uncovered a gold mine of data through the NHRI and civil society data. We can compile, process, and disseminate a few more SDG 16 indicators. Uh, any other comments, feedback, suggestions, recommendations? Let me check online. We have one question. Okay, so there's one question. Um, okay, so what have been the challenges so far in terms of the collaboration between NHRI and NSOs? And how do you surpass those challenges?
First, we are coming from different fields, and coming together as a team wasn't very easy because then, from the statistical office, you look at those who are dealing with human rights matters. What quickly comes to your mind is that these are activists. You take that the wrong way. But then, on understanding what the teams are doing, and on realizing that there are certain areas that we are not good at, and we still need to generate statistics, we would come together. And that's what brought about signing of MOU that we have currently. The second thing is that, uh, you know, the when the human rights institutions are collecting data, and they are not, that is not their field. As a Bureau of Statistics, we really have to try and bring on board the correct way of collecting the statistics. And that's how then we came together. I think we have done that twice, coming together and spelling out how statistics should be generated right from the beginning, right from the objectives to the very end of getting the results and disseminating it. So we have gone through that kind of a process. So the fact that we are coming from different areas, different backgrounds, would naturally make it hard to come together. But of course, having then understood each other, we are now able to move along very well. And of course, what is coming from the other players, the non-state actors, would subject that to some criteria of validating the kind of statistics that is coming out, subjecting to a lot of scrutiny so that we can admit that as official statistics or not. And because we are working together as a team, it is much easier really to get quality statistics. So that's what we have gone through.
Thank you, George. And Raymond?
I guess it's being familiar with the administrative processes of integrating operations between the two agencies. We have been collecting statistics on this for a long time because it's a function of the commission. However, of course, there are administrative processes that we have to go through, and we had to do it within the context of the pandemic. Again, another contextual factor is, of course, the lack of prioritization initially for this one. As anyone who is familiar with the Philippines, human rights has taken a backseat during the previous administration, but now it's sort of being given some priority. So um, I guess we're just taking advantage of that window of opportunity to bring this um, statistics into the official statistical system. Yeah.
Thank you, Raymond. We have a question from that side.
Thank you. It's more of a comment, actually. My name is Maya. I'm from the World Bank UNHCR Joint Data Center on Forced Displacement. And I really wanted to commend you and join my colleague in front here to say it's an excellent panel and it's fantastic to hear the work that you're doing. I was recently in Kenya, or the JDC was, the Joint Data Center was in Kenya together with our management committee. And it's absolutely fascinating to see how the Kenyan government and National Statistical Office is just marching on with the agenda on including vulnerable populations into their national statistics. And more so, what impact it's making on policy making. And we were able to see that firsthand in Kakuma with the county government, just to see on that level how data was impacting decisions and how it was creating settlements out of what was formerly camps. And really laying the ground from some positive inclusive policies. And that has resonated on the global, on the country level where we have seen the enactment of legislation. I also want to say that we're super encouraged by the Kenyan government being part of the EGRIS, of the Expert Group on Refugee and IDP and Statelessness Statistics, because you really are an example, not just an inclusion in statistics, but also in the impact and the use of that data. So thank you for that, and I hope we can use you and have you more vocal, not just Kenya, but also the ones that support you around you, to showcase you as an example for other countries. And my last point is at 2:30 in room 3, there will be a session where we'll be discussing the recommendations on refugee and IDP, internal displaced statistics. So please come and let's continue the conversation there as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, there's been a lot of cross-fertilization within the different discussions, and it's really worth seriously thinking about synergistically approaching these different processes and initiatives. Any other comments or questions? I see none. So I think I'll turn now to our panelists for their final remarks, culminating with Nicola for a summary of our discussions and on the way forward. So maybe we'll start with Raymond.
Well, we're grateful for this opportunity to, for as an organization, to be able to contribute to the measurement of this particular SDG. We've been looking forward to having this officially recognized within the Philippine statistical system, and that should help the work of the commission, and of course that will benefit the country in general. So we're grateful for that chance to be able to be a valuable contributor to this process. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Raymond. Renis, before George.
Yeah, thanks too for the opportunity. And Kenya is always willing to participate in such forums. Thanks for the organizers and OHCHR in specific. We still look forward to more collaboration. Thank you.
Yeah, and we look forward to working even more closely with you, Renis. You've been an excellent partner. And George, final thoughts and suggestions to the audience?
Thank you. I think we would continue doing a good job in this area because we have already formed a technical working committee that brings together all the key players in this area of discussion, so that as a team we are able to soldier on together, and the main aim here is to make life bearable to all these marginalized population, and I think that would be key to the humankind. And the last one I would want to say is that it is important actually to ensure that some of these groups I mean, would come out very clearly. We attempted to do the stateless persons in the census, but the numbers did not come out very clearly, just because some of these groups decided to be quiet on that, and maybe for fear of victimization, which was never meant to be the case anyway. It is a question of now trying to mobilize and sensitize people to give correct information, and that's how we can come in to help as institutions dealing with statistics to give out the numbers. You know, from the numbers we can do a lot in terms of policies, in terms of coming up with the acts and any guidelines that can give good interventions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George, for your participation, for your institution's commitment to this work, and we look forward to working more with your bureau. So, Nicola, what do you think are the lessons learned from these experiences, and what are the possible next steps that other governments and national stakeholders can take to operationalize these good practices that we have heard this morning?
Thank you, Mark, and really a big thank to the panelists, to George, Renis, Raymond, for the presentations, and for the work, their work, and the work of the organizations. I think I won't summarize the entire discussion. I think it has been very rich, but we see clearly from those examples that this collaboration between national human rights institution, national statistical office is bearing fruits, concrete fruits, um, and we see that the importance of data to improve people's life. We see from the words of George about the people behind the data, talking of intersex people. Uh, we see all, I think, all the benefits from this collaboration, and the subsequent bill that also has been developed. I think it's testimony of the importance of this collaboration to mention that the Danish Institute for Human Rights, which I understand also made the first intervention, was also at this first workshop in Kenya between the National Human Rights Institution and the National Statistical Office, and made also great contribution at this occasion. And they could also share more information on their own collaboration in Denmark with the National Statistical Office. So I think this is really a work relevant in every part of the world. And to mention that national human rights institutions, an independent one, is one of the SDG indicators. And I think what we see also from the discussion is that it's only through this kind of collaboration that we can reach out to the groups, to many groups which are left behind. That's the only way we can reach out to those groups, and the only way also to collect some of the SDG indicators at national level. The National Human Institution is the best place for generating and collecting data relevant to some of these SDG indicators, and it's only through this. This approach, an approach in line with human rights, with the universally agreed human rights standard, that we can improve people's lives. So I think moving forward, as also Rennie said, I mean, it's really about working hand in hands, supporting this collaboration in everywhere where there's this willingness, this commitment to produce data to improve people's life, and not to produce statistics or tables or charts that we love, but I think we love even more the people's behind the data. So I think that's really a key takeaway for moving forward. So I think the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights stands ready to support these countries, other countries, and hope that more national statistical office data specialists also in the private sector will engage and in this kind of collaborations, and national human institutions as well as the other countries to improve the use of data, the collection of data to improve people's lives. We see, just we close with that really data matter for human rights, but also that human rights matter for data. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nicola. And that brings us to the close of this panel. Thank you so much to everyone who participated, tuned in person, so online, and also here in person. So I end with, but also by thanking our technical support, our colleagues from the China Statistics Bureau, and from the World Data Forum Organizing Committee, and with an invitation to continue the conversation. We have the Hoover platform, and also we have our email contacts. So please feel free to touch base with us, with the panelists, moving forward, as we try to spread the good news about these new data partnerships. Thank you very much for your support.